Let me pose a question to you that few doctors will. What if your long-standing sexual habits are gradually impeding blood flow to your penis? Not in a sudden, dramatic way, but rather silently, slowly, day by day, until one morning you realize you're not the man you once were, and you can't even pinpoint how it happened. I'm Dr. Monroe, and I've dedicated over 30 years to helping men protect, restore, and even revitalize their health after the age of 60, physically, emotionally, and intimately. Throughout my career, I've observed a concerning trend: men who appear fine, look fine, and still seek intimacy find themselves gradually losing their desire, performance, and sometimes even confidence, all without a clear medical reason. More often than not, it boils down to a few common yet rarely discussed sexual habits. Now, here's where it gets intriguing. What if I told you that the behaviors you were taught to consider normal or even healthy could actually be compromising your blood flow and damaging your capacity for both physical and emotional connection? I'm referring to 5 specific mistakes that may seem harmless at first, but over time drain your vitality, erode intimacy, and constrict the very blood vessels your body requires for pleasure and strength. The good news? Once you identify these mistakes and learn how to reverse them, you can unlock improved performance, deeper connections, and renewed confidence, even if you're already past 60. So stay tuned, as I will soon guide you through each one, what all they are, why they matter, and how to start remedying them today. Before we proceed, if you haven't yet, I encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss future videos designed specifically for men over 60 who want to remain strong, sharp, and connected. If this message resonates with you, please type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. I genuinely want to know how I can make these videos more beneficial for you. Now, let's dive into it. The first mistake is one I see far too often because it lurks in plain sight. It's not about what you do in the bedroom, but rather what your body stops doing long before any real issues arise. If you're over 60, this could be the earliest and most crucial warning sign your body will ever give you. Mistake 1. Ignoring morning erections. It's just age, some might say. I recall a man named Robert who visited my clinic. At 67, he was retired, sharp-minded, and in good shape for his age. He came to me not due to any pain or illness, but because he felt off. He wasn't waking up with morning erections like he used to. Initially, he'd laughed it off, thinking, "I guess that ship has sailed, Doc. Comes with the territory, right?" I posed a simple question. Has your heart stopped beating in the morning? Has your brain stopped thinking? He looked confused and replied, "Of course not." So I asked, "Then why would your manhood stop responding, unless something deeper is happening?" Most men don't realize that those spontaneous morning erections serve a purpose beyond sex. They're a natural way for the body to keep the circulatory system healthy, particularly the delicate network of veins and blood vessels within the penis. These vessels are fragile and require regular blood flow, oxygen-rich, pressurized circulation, to maintain elasticity and responsiveness. When morning erections become infrequent or cease altogether, it often signifies that those vessels are beginning to narrow, stiffen, or even become blocked. There's no pain, no obvious alarm, but slowly, the inner lining of your blood vessels starts to deteriorate. Blood flow diminishes, the veins can't retain it as they once did. And over time, your ability to achieve and maintain firmness during intimacy quietly fades away. The alarming truth is that for many men, this is the first indication that something is amiss, not just down there, but across the entire cardiovascular system. The penis is often the first area where circulation issues manifest due to the small and sensitive blood vessels. Ignoring this sign is akin to disregarding a ticking noise under the hood of your car until the engine inevitably fails. Robert hadn't experienced a morning erection in over a year. After some basic tests, we discovered early-stage vascular blockage, not just in the groin, but also around the heart. He had no idea. So if you're over 60 and have noticed a decline, or absence of morning activity, don't dismiss it. That's not merely aging. It's your body waving a red flag, and it's just the beginning. While this mistake occurs passively, the next one is something men consciously do, believing it helps, but in reality, it rewires the brain and deprives the body of genuine connection. Let me elaborate. If you're still with me and these insights resonate, please type 1 in the comments so I know you're following along. Now, let's examine the second mistake, relying too heavily on porn or fantasy. I once spoke with a man named Glenn, 64, who was recently divorced and trying to regain his footing, physically, emotionally, and intimately. He was healthy on paper, exercised a few times a week, and maintained a good sense of humor. But when we discussed his performance, his smile faded. "It's just not the same anymore, Doc," he said. "When I'm with someone real, I freeze, but when I'm alone with the screen, it works." I nodded, having heard this story countless times, leading to the same silent mistake, depending on fantasy or digital stimulation to feel something. On the surface, it seems benign. It's private, convenient, and provides that quick hit of pleasure. But underneath, a far more damaging process occurs. When a man repeatedly engages with visual stimulation, his brain begins to retrain its reward system. It no longer associates arousal with connection, touch, or real intimacy. Instead, it starts relying on hyperstimulated imagery, things that don't exist in real life. This shift affects not just the mind, but also circulation. Arousal is what drives blood flow. It signals your body to send blood down now. However, if the brain becomes conditioned to respond solely to pixels on a screen, real-life touch loses its potency. Over time, arousal weakens, blood flow slows, and the veins that once filled and maintained pressure stop responding as they should. Glenn's situation wasn't merely a mental distraction, it was about physical detachment. His body had started to ignore his partner because his mind had been rewired. The consequences were not just emotional, they were vascular. Many men fail to understand that real arousal isn't solely about getting excited. It's about keeping the blood vessels active, stretching them regularly, and ensuring nitric oxide flows, so those veins remain open, soft, and alive. When arousal becomes disconnected from genuine intimacy, those veins are utilized less, and less reduced use leads to less blood means less oxygen, and less oxygen means blockage begins gradually. The good news is Glenn made a change. It wasn't easy, but he began stepping away from screens and focusing on real moments, touch, conversation, and emotional presence. In time, his response came back because his blood vessels remembered their purpose. If you've been leaning too heavily on fantasy, now is the time to break that pattern. While this mistake impacts both the mind and circulation simultaneously, the next one goes even deeper into how men approach connection itself. And skipping it doesn't just affect performance, it shortens it. Mistake 3. Rushing or skipping foreplay. I recall a couple, Mark and Linda, who sought my help after 38 years of marriage. Mark was 66, kind and soft-spoken, but clearly frustrated. "I love my wife, Doc," he said, "but things just aren't clicking anymore. I feel rushed, tense, and half the time I can't even get started." When I gently inquired about foreplay, he chuckled awkwardly, saying, "At our age, we don't have the energy for that anymore." That statement encapsulates the third mistake, a quiet, subtle, yet highly destructive one. As we age, blood flow doesn't merely slow down, it requires more time to get moving. The vessels supplying blood to the penis lose their elasticity and need encouragement, warm-up, and patience. That's where foreplay comes in. It's not just for romance, it's a biological necessity. Skipping it is akin to trying to start a cold engine. You're putting pressure on a system that isn't prepared. Over time, this pressure harms the very veins you rely on for performance. Veins that aren't fully dilated can't carry shorter durations and diminished sensation. Many men are unaware that foreplay actually protects blood vessels. It allows nitric oxide to release naturally, relaxing the smooth muscles and enabling blood to flow more freely. Foreplay allows time for arousal to build, not just mentally but physically, engaging the entire circulatory system. Without that time, you're forcing a performance on underprepared vessels, which is when problems arise. Repeatedly pushing blood into tense, unprepared tissue can cause micro tears, stiffness, and eventually scarring, paving the way for blockage. I explained to Mark that foreplay wasn't a luxury at his age. It was a necessity, not just for Linda, but for his vascular health. He needed to stop viewing it as an extra and instead treat it as foundational. Once he did, everything began to shift. Their intimacy improved, their confidence grew, and most importantly, his circulation responded. When the body feels safe and is given time, it begins to heal. If you've been rushing through or skipping this crucial step, believing it saves time or effort, think again. You might save a few minutes, but you're costing your blood vessels far more than you realize. The next mistake is one I encounter almost daily, and it doesn't take place in the bedroom at all. It occurs in your chair, your car, your recliner, and it's quietly robbing you of strength, energy, and yes, intimacy. Let's address it. Mistake 4. Insufficient physical activity. There's a conversation I'll never forget with a man named Harold, 72, a retired firefighter and proud father of 4. He came in for a routine checkup, but as we spoke, he opened up. "I still love my wife, Doc," he said. "But lately, it feels like my body just isn't responding anymore." I inquired about his daily routine, and he admitted, "Honestly, I sit most of the day, watching TV, reading, the occasional drive. I guess I've slowed down." Harold's story is all too familiar, leading us to the 4th mistake. 1. That doesn't feel like a mistake at all. It's not about what you're doing in the bedroom. It's about what you're neglecting the rest of the day. When you're inactive, sitting for hours without moving your body, circulation stagnates. Blood doesn't flow freely. It pools, and the vessels, especially the small veins in the groin, become less responsive. Over time, reduced activity leads to what I term vascular dormancy, where your veins begin to stiffen, narrow, and in some cases clog. Your penis, like every part of your body, relies on oxygen-rich blood delivered through open, flexible veins. However, those veins don't stay healthy on their own. They require movement, regular muscle engagement, heart rate increases, and blood pumping through them to remain alive and clear. In the absence of this, those once supple vessels start to constrict. Circulation declines, nitric oxide production slows, resulting in softer erections, lower stamina, longer recovery times, and a creeping sense of frustration that builds with each attempt at intimacy. I told Harold what I'll share with you now. Motion is medicine. I'm not suggesting you need to run marathons or lift heavy weights, but a daily walk, some light stretching, or a bit of strength training, just 20 to 30 minutes a day, can reactivate your vascular system, improve blood pressure, and restore blood flow to areas you may have thought were irreparable. Additionally, something significant occurs when you start moving again. You feel stronger, more alive, and more in tune with your body. That confidence can make a tremendous difference between performance anxiety and genuine presence. So, the next time you feel too tired to move, remember it's not just your muscles that suffer, it's your veins, your energy, and your intimacy. However, as damaging as inactivity can be to your physical circulation, the final mistake may be even more detrimental because it severs connections on an emotional level, which also directly impacts your performance. Let's explore this. Mistake 5. Avoiding emotional connection or vulnerability. Some of the most challenging conversations I've had with patients didn't occur during physical exams. They surfaced when I asked, "How's your relationship?" That's when the real silence begins. One man, Frank, 69, looked down and said, "We sleep in the same bed, but it feels like there's a wall between us." I don't know how we got here. This represents the 5th mistake, one that most men don't consider, yet it might be the most damaging of all: holding back emotionally, avoiding vulnerability, and allowing emotional distance to grow quietly. Over time, many don't recognize that intimacy and circulation are profoundly interlinked. Emotional disconnection leads to stress, which constricts blood vessels. When you're distanced from your partner, when there's tension, resentment, or unspoken fears, your body reacts. Your nervous system remains guarded, and guarded men rarely experience full, responsive blood flow. This isn't merely a mood issue, it's a physical one. Chronic emotional stress triggers cortisol, which hardens arteries, diminishes nitric oxide production, and gradually tightens the veins responsible for healthy erections. The outcome is a body that is physically unable to open up because it has been emotionally closed off for too long. I told Frank something I'll share with you now. You don't need to become a poet or wear your heart on your sleeve, but you must be willing to be authentic. Connection isn't about grand romantic gestures. It's about presence, looking your partner in the eye, asking how they feel, and admitting when you're scared or uncertain. That's where trust begins to rebuild, and with trust comes relaxation, which in turn promotes blood flow. Everything is interconnected. When the emotional barrier starts to crumble, something powerful unfolds. The body relaxes, the breath deepens, and blood begins to circulate once more, not just through the heart, but throughout the entire vascular system. I've witnessed men transition from months of dysfunction to vibrant, connected intimacy simply by opening up a little more each day. So if you've been holding back, thinking it's safer to remain quiet, consider whether that silence is worth what it's costing you. Over time, emotional distance not only harms the heart, but also gradually shuts down the veins that sustain life. Now that we've explored these 5 silent mistakes, you might be wondering what you can do to reverse them. What simple, practical steps can you take to reignite circulation, restore confidence, and rebuild intimacy after 60? That's precisely what we'll discuss next. Conclusion: reclaiming your circulation, confidence, and connection after 60. If there's one lesson I've gleaned from 3 decades of working with men over 60, it's this: what feels normal often isn't. We tell ourselves things like, "It's just aging, it's too late to change," or "maybe this is how it's supposed to be now." Yet deep down, many of us recognize when something isn't right, when our energy wanes, when intimacy feels distant, when our bodies stop responding as they once did. More often than not, it's not merely your age, it's your habits and those silent mistakes that gradually restrict the very blood vessels keeping you alive, present, and connected. We began by discussing morning erections, not just as a sexual indicator, but as a sign of healthy blood flow and a responsive vascular system. When they cease, it's your body whispering that something is shifting. Next, we examined the hidden impacts of relying too heavily on fantasy, how it retrains your brain, dulls your arousal, and ultimately weakens the natural pathways that facilitate blood flow to the crucial areas. We talked about foreplay and how skipping this step isn't merely about rushing intimacy. It's about neglecting the essential process that opens veins, relaxes tissue, and prepares the body for robust circulation. We touched on physical activity, emphasizing how being sedentary undermines not only your muscles, but your entire vascular system. Blood flow isn't passive. It requires motion to thrive. When movement ceases, those veins start to close silently. Finally, we address the emotional barriers, the spaces that develop between partners when communication falters and vulnerability diminishes, and how that emotional disconnection physically constricts blood vessels, severing intimacy from within. But here's the truth I hope you carry with you. None of this is irreversible. The body is more forgiving than we often realize. The moment you become genuinely aware of these 5 mistakes is when the healing begins. Circulation can improve, nerves can recover, confidence can return, and intimacy can be reignited. You don't need to transform into someone else. You simply need to reconnect with the version of yourself that knows how to move, feel, connect, and care. That version is still within you. It hasn't vanished. It's just waiting for the right invitation. And now you have the roadmap. The question is, what will you do with it?